What's up, guys? Rick here with your DFS preview for this week's Farmers Insurance Open. This golf tournament starts on Wednesday. There, you've been warned. A Wednesday through Saturday event. The PGA Tour does not want to compete, probably correctly, with NFL Championship Sunday, so they run this Wednesday through Saturday. Very, very unique situation on the PGA Tour, so make sure you get your lineups in. Make sure you get your one-and-done selections in. Make sure you set your fantasy lineups. Make sure you get your bets in, all for a Wednesday morning start in San Diego. I'll be there, right? So let's talk about how this is going to change the schedule for the course of the week. So if you're watching this as it's being released, that's Monday. That's your DFS preview. There will be a Tuesday betting preview with Andy. That is normal. The only thing that will not happen is the live chat. That's usually Wednesday. I would have to move it to Tuesday, but because I'll be going to Torrey Pines, it's just not going to happen. There will still be a Jock Market Power Hour, but it'll be Tuesday night, 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time instead of Wednesday night. So if you want to bring your questions there, happy to answer as many as possible as we go through stock market DFS. So that's really the only change over the course of the week. And as I mentioned, if you're going to be out at Torrey Pines, I'll be out here all 4 days. Say what's up, say hello. Looking forward to getting in touch with a lot of you guys. Not one, but two golf courses in play for this week. So Torrey Pines, there is a north course and there is a south course. What's going to happen is for the first 2 days, each golfer is going to play one round on each. Then there'll be a 36-hole cut. So back to a 36-hole cut from last week. And then they'll all go back to the south course. The south course is the hard one. The south course is the one you know, right? It's the one that Tiger makes the putt in the U.S. Open and goes against Rocco Mediate for 18 holes on Monday, right? It's that one. And they're very, very different. So what you'll see is this course key stats model that I'm showing on my website, RickRunGood.com. It's going to show the data from the South course. 3 out of the 4 rounds are played there, and that is where the shot link data is going to be coming from. And you'll note there's at least one thing that stands out in a big way, and it's driving distance. And it makes a lot of sense. Let me show you the South's scorecard. And this is a big golf course. Par 72, 7,765 yards. And obviously, that's at sea level, right? I mean, it's a hard course. It's long. And if you are not as long as your peers, you're already behind the 8 ball. And at least the correlation model that I run backs that up. In fact, there's only 9 other courses on the PGA Tour schedule where driving distance was more important. You see, there's actually a negative correlation on driving accuracy, which I don't think means you don't have to worry about where you drive it. Like if you're loose off the tee, you're going to be in trouble. It's 3.5 inch thick rough. We'll talk about how wet it's going to be in just a second, or how lush it's going to be in just a second. But I just think that the guys that drive it really, really far, which is a huge boost, generally are not super accurate. So I think that's why the correlation model looks like this. And obviously, if you can drive it long and straight, John Rahm, you're in business around this place. We'll talk about the rough in a second. Let me show you the North Course scorecard here. It's 7,200 yards. They're both par 72s. The North Course, much easier. They've redone this a couple of times over the years. I think the last redesign was 2016, 2017, something like that. The North Course is going to play a lot easier, right? So the North Course last year played to a 68.7 scoring average. So what is that? Is that 3 shots under par? 3.2 shots under par? 3.3 shots under par? And the South Course played over par, 72.37. So you're talking about likely, or at least last year, there being a 3-shot difference between the two golf courses. You're really going to want to be making your hay on the North Course and just not holding on the South Course, but really taking what the golf course gives you, taking advantage of the opportunities that you get. The differences between the two golf courses, not only in length, but also in putting surface, right? You'll hear it all week long, the South Course with these Poana greens. The North Course actually has bent grass greens, and the Poana greens, you'll hear it like throughout the day. It buds, right? And it gets this, it's very nasty stuff. It's hard to read. The ball kind of bounces around a little bit, and later in the day it gets even more and more difficult with foot traffic and the way that it kind of grows. And it's a difficult little strain of grass, and the guys that play on it a lot are generally more comfortable with it. We'll look this week at guys that putt much better on Poa annua than other surfaces. They're out there, right? I mean, Matt McNeely, I'll just throw one out there for you. Matt McNeely is one of those guys that putts much better on Poa annua. Makes sense. He, grew up at Pebble Beach and plays a lot on the West Coast, and like that makes complete sense. So there is a little bit of experience when it comes to this type of surface. The South Course in itself, being long, obviously great. Playing out of the fairway, going to be better than playing out of the rough. It's going to ask you to be a pretty stout tee to green player, a very good ball striker. You're going to have to hit a lot of high, long irons into these greens, which is something not a lot of guys are going to be able to do. Think about the guys who have had success here recently. Luke List last year, and Luke List has been miserable since he won this event last year, but when he's at his best, like the ball striking ability makes perfect sense. Like Luke List contending, Luke List winning, Will Zalatoris finished in a playoff with him. John Rahm obviously has had unbelievable success around this place. Tony Finau has been pretty good as well. Jason like these are the guys that we're thinking about. And when you start to think, okay, what do they do well? It's that long iron play, it's that approach play, hitting it long and straight off the tee. That's kind of the pathway to success here. It is possible. Right? Is it possible that like a Brian Harmon is going to find himself on top of the leaderboard? Maybe. I just think it's a much more narrow path. You've got to be really, really stout around this place. A couple of other things to consider. So we obviously have the Farmers Insurance Open history, but we also have that 2021 U.S. Open that was held at Torrey Pines. So we have that history as well. So when you're going through the data, you can look up Torrey Pines South and get both U.S. Open and Farmers Insurance Open. You'll see me do that multiple times throughout the week. The weather. I've already read quotes about this. So you always get, and trust me, I've played these courses a lot. That South course with that thick rough, for me, when you hit it into the rough, it's like a one-shot penalty. I have to take a wedge out and just bang it back out because I'm cooked. I can't get anything on it. They've gotten a lot of rain this January. In fact, I'm showing you the graph right now if you're watching on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, by the way, you can download this as a podcast. I don't think a lot of people realize that. I don't talk about it enough. If you just want to listen to this, there are audio forms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, everything, link in the description. They've gotten 5.5 inches of rain already in January. That is like 3 times the amount of rain they normally get in January. And because it's been spread out and consistent, it basically created a situation where this rough is super lush right now, right? It's great. It's obviously great for golf course maintenance in Southern California, but you're getting this really lush, thick rough right now. The last time they had this much rain in January was 2016. Yeah, that 2016, right? Remember Brandt Snedeker winning it because they had to there was this unbelievable wind and weather, and Billy Horschel's got his hat on backwards and he's running around like a madman, and the scoring average was like 80, and Snedeker got in before the storm and shot like 1 under par and just stole the golf tournament. Like, it was absolutely wild. Go back and watch the footage from that. That's the last time they had this much rain in January. So helps to put that a little bit into perspective. So I think you're going to have to be really, really solid with the big clubs this week. The other thing to note, and this is a little bit of what we talked about last week, where a course rotation in general, it creates a little more chaos. It creates a situation where guys are just going to get lucky on the right end of the draw or unlucky on the wrong end of the draw, or it's just going to be weird or anything like that. This is only a 2-course rotation. You're only playing 1 round to the North Course. But the other thing with the South Course itself is you are on knife's edge at all times, right? So if you are playing really well and you're in control of your ball, yeah, you can go out and shoot a couple under par. But if you are on the wrong side of everything, your mistakes compound very, very quickly, and you can put up some big numbers and you can start missing putts and you're just like, nothing's going in for you. So what you end up finding with golf courses like this is that you don't have a lot of guys with consistent course history. So think about the golf courses that probably have the most consistent course history. Augusta National comes front of mind because you're always getting the same, basically the same level of golfers, same caliber of golfers on a golf course that plays generally very, very similar every single year. It's a smaller field, so more guys make the cut. It's a very, very sticky course history. This place is not, right? You will see guys that go like, win, miscut, second, miscut, third, miscut. Like it's crazy, right? So I think there's only like 3 guys off the top of my head that have really, really good course history. Obviously, it's John Rahm. I mentioned Tony Finau, and then Jason Day, who he's playing himself back into form now. But like those are the three guys that off the top of my head, like, okay, that makes sense. They've almost always had great success. Although I think even Finau might have missed his last two cuts. We'll pull it up in a second. But you're not going to find a lot of elite course history. So you kind of have to be willing to take, hey, this guy's missed two straight cuts here. Like, yeah, that happens. So kind of not throw it out the window, but consider that as you're going through this process. Okay. Let's jump over to the cheat sheet. We'll start talking about some names and we'll start dissecting this. Very, very exciting. I love this. I love Torrey Pines. One of my favorite places on earth. I can't wait to get out there, and I've played it quite a bit. So very, very much looking forward to this, but let's start talking about some salaries and start talking about some names. All right, 4 golfers over $10,000. Jon Rahm, 11.6. More on that in a second. Tony Finau, 10.5. Xander, 10.3. Colin Morikawa, $10,000 flat. Jon Rahm at $11,600 just became the most expensive golfer of this season. Previously, it was Scotty Scheffler, $11,500 for the Houston Open. If you've heard me make this argument before, I actually think he could be more expensive, right? I mean, he's 4.5 or 4-1 to win this golf tournament. Generally, the way that DraftKings does pricing compared to the way they do their odds, there's just not a big enough gap between Jon Rahm and everybody else. It's about $1,100. But if you look at the implied odds, he's going to win this golf tournament 20% of the time. I don't actually believe he's going to win this golf tournament 20% of the time, but if it's even 12%, something like that, then yeah, there's probably a world where he should be 12,000, 12,200, something in that range. I don't really have any analysis here on Jon Rahm, right? I mean, what he's doing is absolutely absurd. He's got 4 wins in his last 6 starts. If you look back at the strokes gained metrics over that time frame, he's gained double digits in terms of strokes gained in 6 of his last 7 events. It's an incredibly high floor with an incredibly high ceiling, and now he's going to the one golf course on planet Earth that he's probably best suited for, or at least he likes the most, right? This is where he proposed to his now wife. This is where he won not only his first PGA Tour win, but his US Open. Like, this is his spot. Jon Rahm is by far and away the best player in this field at Torrey Pines, and it's not even a sample size thing. So a lot of times I have to say that as a caveat. So you're looking at the Holy Grail right now. I have to say it as a caveat like, oh, so-and-so is the best here of anybody who has at least 10 rounds. Because you usually have somebody like this, Aaron Rai or Austin Smotherman, who have played here once, and they played really well, and it skews the data. No, that does not even apply here. Jon Rahm, 2.97 strokes gained per round, is the best at Torrey Pines. No sample size caveats, nothing. He's got 28 rounds at this event plus the US Open, and it's just been, absolutely lights out. Worst finish, T29. Everything else is a top 7. Obviously, the 2 victories. So the way to deploy Jon Rahm, seemingly would be in your fantasy lineups, to be in your DFS lineups. It would be maybe getting him and somebody else near the top of the board and living down at the bottom. If you want to play the ownership game and see that Jon Rahm's 30% and forego him, that's fine. He was 30% owned last week. But I think that you probably shouldn't bet Jon Rahm. One and done. At this point, you should probably just wait for a larger purse. I think the way to get access to Jon Rahm is in your matchup markets, in your season-long fantasy, and then obviously here in your DFS lineups. It's just, it's pretty crazy what he's done. I'll try to also put this into perspective. Last 24 rounds, Jon Rahm is gaining over 3 strokes per round, 3.15. That is nearly double the guy in second, which is Tony Finau. Again, I don't need to tell you that Jon Rahm's a good player. I'm just trying to illustrate how good he has been over the course of his last handful of starts. The rest of the 10K range is really fascinating because if everybody goes to Jon Rahm, what happens next? So Tony Finau is 10.5. Tony Finau is another one of these guys who's had a ton of great success at Torrey. And also, you just saw me show you the power rankings. It's basically, he's the second best player in this field over the last 24 or 30 or 36 or however you want to slice it. It's kind of been him and Jon Rahm at the top, even though there is a pretty big gap. But because Xander Schauffele is 10.3, And you're going to get the narrative of him being a San Diego kid, and you're going to see the narrative, or at least it's not a narrative, it's the facts that he's played much better at Torrey Pines recently than overall in his career. So if you go and look at Xander's holy grail here, you've got 4 missed cuts out of his first 5 trips to the Farmers Insurance Open. Then he starts to right the ship a little bit, right? He finished runner-up here in 2021. Then he comes back 5 months later for the U.S. Open, finishes T7. Then he finishes T34 last year. So those are 3 of his better results just in his last 3 trips. So is he figuring it out, or are we expecting kind of a mixed bag of results? But with his finish last week, not shaking off all of the back concerns, you could see a lot of people going to Jon Rahm. You could see a lot of people going to Xander Schauffele, and it leaves kind of Collin Morikawa and Tony Finau looking around like, well, what about us? Right? What about us? Finau's been awesome. Certainly interested to see if he checks in at like 16% ownership or something like that. We'll know later in the week, obviously, as this gets updated, and it'll happen quickly over the course of Monday and Tuesday because this event is going to start on Wednesday morning. We'll know kind of the way this 10K range is shaping out. So if you're not playing Rahm, you're probably going to end up playing either Finau or Morikawa because of kind of your game theory conversations. Let's look at Collin real quick. The argument against Collin is going to be his lack of distance here. He is by far the shortest of the guys in the 10K range. Xander, 300 yards on average. Tony, 303. Jon Rahm, 313. Collin, 289. Now, he hits a lot more fairways than the rest of those guys, and that just kind of narrows his path at Torrey Pines a little bit, right? Because if he's playing out of the fairway, yes, he will be shorter than everyone else. Everyone else will kind of get a little bit of access, or excuse me, will separate themselves a little bit from Collin off the tee. But if he is playing out of the fairway, it's going to be scary stuff, right? Because he's going to be able to take dead aim, and we know that he can kind of putt much better on Poa annua now than he ever has before. So Collin is really, really interesting in this spot. The pathway to the top for him is more narrow because he has to play out of the fairway. If Collin does not play out of the fairway, he will miss the cut. That might be an exaggeration, but you get my point, right? Like, he has to do this one thing. He does it more than everybody else, so you think he's going to continue to do it. And if he does that, he'll be just fine. But he does not have the luxury of missing fairways with this distance. The 9K range, and I must admit, I was like, where's Sam Burns? Sam Burns. Where is Sam Burns? Well, I want to click Sam Burns' name. He's not in the field, which is disappointing. He's played well here. He was in that final group with Patrick Reed, and then he really, really struggled on Sunday and finished T21. I won't waste your. I was excited to bet Sam Burns. He's not here. Will Zalatoris, Justin Thomas, Sungjae Im, Taylor Montgomery, 92, Max Homa, and then Hideki Matsuyama, who's a flat $9,000. Zalatoris is going to be popular, as he should be, right? A guy who can hit his long irons really well, who has a little bit of success here. So he's got the 7th place finish 2 years ago, the runner-up finish where he lost in a playoff to Luke List last year. The other 2 trips, so he missed the cut at the U.S. Open, and he missed the cut when he played this back in 2018 as the Farmers Insurance Open. So 2 missed cuts, 2 top 7 finishes. I would wipe away the one from 2018, completely different golfer from 2018 to what he was in 2021 and beyond. So we've got 3 trips to Torrey Pines for Zalatoris in since 2021, and it's 2 top 7 finishes. So no worries there. Justin Thomas is really interesting, right? So he's got 4 trips here. 3 of them are top 20s, but none of them are better than like T17 or something like that, and then 1 missed cut. And he's been a little all over the place. You know, the driver was bad in Maui at the Tournament Champions. He lost 3.3 strokes. He lost another stroke on approach. This is admittedly worrisome. This right here, this is a stretch now from the Scottish Open to the Tournament of Champions where Justin Thomas has been literally tour average, literally pedestrian on approach. That is very concerning because look at this stretch of golf before the Scottish Open. +6, +6.5, +2, +3, +4, +5, +3.5, +7. Lost a ton at Colonial, but that's him gaining, at least a stroke per round, basically. And now he is tour average. That's what? I mean, that's 4 shots worse over the course of an event. So that's a little bit worrisome. But I think if you were to zoom out and you were to look at everybody in this field for the last 100 rounds, and I'm kind of just doing this on the fly. I don't know what this is going to look like, but I bet you Justin Thomas he's the fourth best player in this field over the last 100 rounds. If we just do rounds that were played on the PGA Tour, I bet you he's even better. Yeah, he's number one. So like this is really, I think, an interesting buy spot for Justin Thomas, where you're just investing in that long-term form, right? This is something that or at least I tend to do more with the elite guys. And I think Justin Thomas certainly falls into that category. So you're saying, on paper, this should be a pretty decent spot for him. I'm going to say if he can find that ceiling, which a lot of the top guys are always one swing away, he has the ability to win this golf tournament. The other thing to consider here is that Justin Thomas has a massive ceiling. So this is strokes gained distribution. So this is the amount of times that he gains 5 or more strokes to the field. He does it 9% of the time. It's right behind only Taylor Montgomery and Jon Rahm, believe it or not, those two. But you can see JT's floor much lower than Jon Rahm's. It's actually been lower than Taylor Montgomery's. It's been actually similar to Will Gordon. So Justin Thomas is the more volatile option here in this 9K range. But if you're looking for that, that's a really good buy because everybody's going to go to Zalatoris, right? Who's not going to go back to Taylor Montgomery, who has never disappointed anyone, right? If you have played Taylor Montgomery at all this season, he's like never disappointed you. Maybe the 58th place finish that he had in Houston or 57th place finish, but other than that, it's been entirely top 15 finishes. He finished 11th at this event last year. Like, who is not playing Taylor Montgomery because they have never been burned by this guy, right? So I think there's an opportunity where Montgomery catches a little bit of steam. Zalatoris is certainly going to catch a little bit of steam. JT comes in under-owned with a lot of upside. Sungjae Im has played well here in the past at this event, 36th, 32nd, and 6th. It makes sense. He's a great ball striker. Like, I get it. I'm interested to see what everyone does with Homa. So we have not seen Max since the Tournament of Champions. And what I think we have to probably point out here is just the constant improvement. So Homa actually becomes really difficult to model because he is constantly getting better, right? And the version of himself, 6 months prior is almost always worse, right? So you can look at this. This is a constant improvement let's just go from 2019. He was a tour average player. 2020, he gained a third of a stroke per round. 2021, he gained a half a stroke per round. 2022, he's gained a stroke per round. And now we're in the 2023 season, and he's right back at that same number, but he's hitting his irons better than he ever has. His short game is better than it's ever been. His putter is by far the best it's ever been. He's a West Coast guy who knows how to play on Poana. So he's actually he's difficult to model in some scenarios, but Max Homa at $9,100, like, I'm very interested in that. Now, if the industry comes around in the next day or two and says, okay, well, we're going to just not be as heavy on Zalatoris as you, Rick, thinks we are going to be, and we're going to play Max Homa instead, like, okay, I guess I could calm that down. But Homa could be a very interesting one-and-done option for this week. He could be a very interesting guy you want to play in matchups or top 10s or something like that, because I get where we're going here, right? This constant trajectory, this pretty decent setup for him. He's longer than you probably think he is. He's longer than Taylor Montgomery. He's only 4 yards shorter than Justin Thomas. He's longer than Hideki. Like, I get it. I certainly get it. Before we go into the $8,000 range, I promised you the best putters on Poana. So let me do that. I'll go back to the start of 2020, and we'll look for guys with, again, so this is where we run into like a sample size thing, right? So how about at least 25 rounds or at least 20 rounds, 24 rounds, something like that? Matt McNeely, I already talked about. He's number one, right? So he's in that $8,600 range. I'll show you his results in a second. He's gaining a stroke per round on Poana. Wyndham Clark is second, 34 rounds, 0.89. Patrick Rogers is up here. Jon Rahm is fourth. No surprise there. JB Holmes back in the field. Probably not going to play JB Holmes. Okay, so this is interesting. So Doug Gim, noted poor putter, is actually a positive putter on Poana in 25 rounds. 0.63 strokes per round. Let me just pull up Doug Gim really quickly here. I know he's not. I know he's in the $6,000 range, and he's missed a ton of cuts, and he has not played particularly well. But I want to see how it's been. Yeah, okay. I was hoping to see something a little bit different. So he's been putting poorly. Not as bad as I would have expected. I was hoping to see a little bit better in the ball striking categories. He's lost on approach in 6 out of his last 7. He's missed 3 cuts in a row. He's only, he's missed 6 of his last 8 cuts. I was hoping to see a little bit of ball striking and then put him on Poana greens and hopefully he can marry that, but that's not what we're seeing. I mean, you can see Doug Gim's splits here. He's a big loser on everything but Poana. So maybe it would be an absolute flyer because I wish he was hitting it better, but that is a big discrepancy there. The 8s are really cool. So everyone will play Jason Day, right? And Jason Day will be a very popular one and done option. I don't even mind that all that much, especially if your one and done just started at the Sony Open and this is week 3. You don't really have to play your position yet. I could absolutely see you using Jason Day, who's gained strokes on approach. Oh my gosh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 out of his last 10. He's coming in with 5 top 21 finishes in his last 6 starts. And now I mentioned this at the top, like one of the very few guys who has just been awesome at Torrey Pines, right? And we'll pull up his Farmers history. And he did it again last year as well, where he had a T3 last year. He's got 2 wins at this event. He's got a bunch of top 10s. He missed the cut in 2021. He missed it in 2017. He missed it in 2016. It happens, right? There's going to be some ugly carnage missed cuts this week by guys at the top of the board. It's absolutely going to happen. I don't mind if you want to play Jason Day this week. The maybe more interesting option, and we'll see what the ownership comes out to be, would be Matt McNeely. Speaking of guys, throw McNeely into the Max Homa category where he's just getting better all the time. Look at the last 6 starts from Max Homa. And I'll get my head out of the way here a little bit. This is just pure strokes gain, +8, +5.5, +6, +8, +4.5, +7.6. That turns into no worse than a T27 dating back to the event here in Las Vegas at the Shriners, with a bunch of top 20s, a handful of top 12s in the mix as well. And we know he's always putts very well on Poana. Now he's kind of reliant on the flat stick, which is a little bit worrisome, but it's the same as Taylor Montgomery, right? When you're that guy and that's your skill set and you can constantly do it, like, cool, no problem. There's just a different way to solve the math problem. So that's interesting. McNeely at 8,600. Low-key JJ Spawn, right? Does JJ Spawn finish outside the top 20 anymore? JJ Spawn, who is going to have to have a pretty narrow path here, right? He's one of the shortest hitters on tour, averages 294 off the tee, but he is constantly driving in the fairway, hits a ton of greens, has not finished outside of the top 15 in his last 4 starts. He has 6 top 25s in his last 7. He hasn't missed a cut since the Wyndham Championship. That was last season. Gaining on approach, gaining off the tee. The short game is stout. Let's see what he's done at this event. I think he's got a couple of top 30s, probably nothing too. Yeah, I mean, T9, that was 7 years ago, was his best finish, but 2 of the last 3 years, he's been T30, T34. He missed the cut in between. So it's not the worst thing in the world, but just worth noting that he is on a stretch right now. The one thing that I always find really interesting that happens here is someone like Adam Hadwin, who, everybody wanted to play the Desert Fox last week because he had this elite course history at the American Express. We know he shot a 59. And then what happens is he just gets discarded, right? It's like, okay, well, we played him at that spot. Now we can just move on. Well, he played fine last week. T18. That's probably way better than expectation. That would have been better than what his line would have been set for. He was probably a dog to finish inside the top 20. Gained 7 strokes to the field. Gained 7.5 on approach alone in Houston. So this is now a stretch where he has gone. His last 5. Now it dates back to Shriners. Has 2 top 10s. 3 of them are top 18 finishes. No worse than T49. That was the CJ Cup. That was a very difficult event. We know he's a great putter in general, but he's great on Poana. Let's look up his Farmers history, and we'll find it's okay. He missed the cut last year, but had made the cut in 5 previous to that. Nothing too special, but I think it's really worth noting he's the perfect example of this, where you have a guy who was very, very popular last week, or everybody was talking about him, or everybody wrote him up as a course horse, or everybody did whatever, and now that week's over, and you just discard him, but there's no reason to do that, right? He's $8,200. He's playing well. He finished 18th last week. Like, what are we doing here, guys? What are we doing? The Cam Davis miscut was really disappointing last week, obviously. Now, he lost strokes across the board, lost in all 4 categories, which I believe is the first time he's done that since maybe ever. I'm kind of looking back since here, the 2021 Sanderson Farms was the last time he lost strokes across the board. So that's pretty uncharacteristic. I'll see what the industry does, but I will probably get back in on Cam Davis in some capacity this week. And then Hayden Buckley's back in the field. $8,000. He is fresh off the runner-up finish at the Sony. You guys know how high I am on him this year. He is a great driver of the golf ball. You're going to need to drive it well. Yeah, going right back to him. This Luke list, like, okay, you can get ready to clip this. This Luke list price at $8,000 is a joke, right? I know he's the defending champion. I know that he has played this event really, really well. He has, boy, I mean, since this win last year, he's missed like more than half of his cuts. His best finish was a T11. That was at the Tournament of Champions. There's only 39 golfers in this field. He's losing 5 to 8 strokes putting regularly. The ball striking is not even as good as it once was. It's okay. I mean, it's better than average, but it's not as good as it once was. This is kind of a joke, right? I mean, he was, let's see here. He's $8,000. He has not been $8,000 since the Valero Texas Open. He was $8,500. He has been living in the 6,000s and low 7,000s. Now we get an $8,000 price tag. That feels like an absolute trap, but I guess maybe he'll just win it again. But that's a tough scene. Speaking of tough scenes, I got wiped again on Bro Throw with the matchups that you guys sent me. So I lost I think it was only 4 or 5, but I lost every matchup last week that you guys sent over. Luckily, it wasn't for much, but if you want to get into this group, so Bro Throw, it's the juice. The juice does not go to the house, right? So you're just betting against other people, and we have a group here. And I swear we probably have 400 people in this group now, so we can kind of all just make wagers with one another. Yeah, we have 396, and I'll let these two guys in. So we have 398. I'd love to get this over 400, over 500, so that we can just continue to bet with one another. So there's a link in the description, promo code, or it's not a promo code. It's brothrow.com/Rick. There's a ton of, obviously, wagers for NFL at any price point, $5 up to $500, and you can take whatever side you want. You can see what's currently out there and go on from there. So check that out, because they were also doing something cool where during the course of the event, it was like on Friday night, I think it was like John Rahm versus the field, and there was a line set on that. I think it was John Rahm plus 140, something like that. I'd have to look it up, but that is, it's cool. They're doing a really good job on golf bets right now. A lot of matchups and a lot of things to look at. Okay. The $7,000 range. Okay. How do we want to do this? I was not very high on Taylor Pendrith last week. And I, just pat myself on the back here. That worked out very well. He missed the cut. This is a much better setup for him, right? Allow him to just bomb it off the tee, where distance is really, really important. If he misses the fairway, okay, fine, but we've got other things that we can bank on. He lost 3 strokes off the tee at the American Express. Now, that's only one round. That's the one round at the stadium course, right? Because of the way that they do shot length for the 3-course rotation. He is a constant gainer. That's the first time he's lost off the tee since the genesis of last year, coming up on a year, right? Now, he did miss 4 months with that broken rib last year, but he was great before that. He was great after that. This is one of the spots for him, right? When you start pointing out better spots for Taylor Pendrith than most, it's like here, Detroit Golf Club, maybe 3M a little bit. But like, just, I think we got to get back on Taylor Pendrith for this week. He finished 16th here last year. Don't mind that whatsoever. The rest of the 7K range. So guys that we've kind of been tracking, Thomas Dietrich is criminally underpriced here, right? At $7,600. He is being priced with guys that are, in some cases, an entire stroke per round worse than him in this 7K range over the last 24 rounds. I mean, Scott Stallings is, I know he has one huge outlier, but like a stroke and a half per round worse. Harris English has been 2/3 of a stroke worse. Even Taylor Pendrith, a guy that I love, is like 2/3 of a stroke per round worse. Davis Riley, a full stroke worse. These are guys that are all priced similar. Thomas Dietrich, this run he's on, in an event that's like really weird and tricky, and you can get kind of blown up. T26 at the American Express, which is now what? 6 top 26 finishes in 7 PGA Tour starts this season, something like that. I mean, it's just really, really good. I don't think this is a particularly great spot for him, but I do think that when you're rolling, you're playing well, you're playing with confidence, you are playing a lot, he's playing a lot. This is a bad price. It's a really bad price on him. Nick Hardy is going to be a really interesting litmus test, right? He is longer than average off the tee, very inaccurate, but great on his second shot. So if we are going to say that, the model loves driving distance and doesn't care as much about accuracy, and then you get the ability to hit your second shots into these greens and be on the correct tier and then all that fun stuff, you got to think Nick Hardy has a decent chance. He's missed his 2 cuts at this event the last 2 times he's played it, but one of them was like 2018, so I'm not too worried about that. Still trying to figure out what type of golfer he is. He's going to have to putt well, right? He's going to have to putt well on these Poana greens. That's where he usually gives up 3 strokes or more. Let's see if he has any Poana rounds. Oh, he does. 9 rounds, nearly a stroke per round. Oh, boy. I think all of them came at last year's U.S. Open. But, oh, man. I mean, it's not crazy. Poana, it can kind of baffle some of the better putters. Not baffle, but like be very frustrating. And for the worst putters, it's like, well, I'm kind of more at the luck of the draw than I've ever been. And this is going to cause fits for everybody. So I might as well just roll the rock. That's really interesting. Wow. I was not necessarily expecting to see that. So Nick Hardy's here at $7,400. That certainly has my full attention. If we sort the 7K range by last 24 rounds, the guy at the top is Ben Griffin. He did it again. 32nd place finish at the American Express. That's a bunch of good finishes in a row. He's gaining a stroke and a half per round. Will Gordon is second. Patrick Rogers third. Alex Smalley fourth. Aaron Baddeley, right? Fifth. Flat $7,000. Ben Griffin, I believe, is the number one. Yeah, he's the number one Jock market player in the last 10 starts. He's basically doubling your money and then some. 133% average ROI. This is stock market DFS. You buy shares of golfers. If they outperform their expectation, you win money. If they don't, you lose money. So average IPO, $3.28 a share. Average payout, $683 over his last 10. It's the best player in the field. The other thing is, Jock Market released prop pick'em very, very quietly last week. I think it's a soft launch. You have to update the app. They're like trying to now they've got both games, right? They've got pick'em and they've got stock market DFS. So 2 of my favorite games ever are now in one spot. So I'm pretty stoked about that. There's you can use my deposit code, Rick. There's a link in the description. It'll get you a $100 deposit match. Play both of these. Buying shares of Ben Griffin might be a pretty good idea this week. I think last week, was it on the live chat where I was like, just go buy like 10 shares of JT Poston. Yeah, that worked out well. It doesn't always work out that way, but Ben Griffin's been really, really good. He's the top earner in the Jock market. He's the top player in the 7K range in general in terms of strokes gained. Really excited about that. I will point out Robbie Shelton again. I screwed this one up. I had Robbie Shelton, someone I've been so high on, and I had him ranked very, very highly in my season-long rankings. And then I got cold feet, and I waived him in some leagues for Nick Taylor last week. That did not work out well. Robbie Shelton finishes T6 at the American Express, gains 5 strokes on approach. So now we've got only 2 measured events this season in which he's lost strokes on approach. One of them, he lost 0.08. That was in Napa. It's basically 0. So really, really good ball striker. He is short off the tee. He's going to have to keep it in play, but he has played well here. He has done that here at Torrey Pines. So if you look at his results, it was 2021 and 2020, 16th place finish, 36th place finish, 2 top 10s in his last 3 starts. I'm sorry, Robbie Shelton. That's on me. I will never do that again. He's $7,200. Certainly a good value for this week. The 6s, and then we'll run a model. Justin Lauer, $6,900, right? There was the long break between the RSM Classic and his first start of 2023, which was the American Express. Got off to a slow start, played really well the final 3 days. So he gained basically a stroke and a half per round each of the last 3 rounds. Yeah, go do that again. Gained 6 strokes on the field at the Farmers Insurance Open, and I'll love it for $6,900. So that is interesting at 69 to start off this range. Let me point out a couple of other things here. So if you just flip this last 24 rounds of guys in the 6K range, this could go back pretty far. Some of these guys haven't played since like the RSM Classic, or even if you're Cody Gribble, like Bermuda, basically. Maybe even further than that. So it's Cam Percy, Eric Cole, Kevin Yu, Cody Gribble, Justin Lauer, top 5 strokes gained per round, last 24 rounds. Look at this, though. Kevin Yu gaining 2 fantasy points per round to the field. That is basically twice that of anyone else in this range because he makes so many freaking birdies and he's going to give it back with bogeys. But like, if you can find him into the weekend, he's going to circle a lot of numbers on his card, right? I mean, that's a pretty big difference between other guys who have the same strokes gain metrics or better, and you are gaining twice the fantasy points per round to them. It's fairly significant. Is Nico Echeverria in this range? He's got to be, right? Yeah, okay. He's 6,500. So let me pull him up real quick. Not ready to like jump out and get him, but someone we need to keep an eye on. Gained 2.4 strokes ball striking at the RSM Classic. Missed the cut, gaining 1.6. T12 at the Sony Open, gained 2 strokes ball striking there. Gained strokes at the American Express, missed the cut. So in the 2 course rotations that he's played in the last 3 starts, he has gained strokes to the field and missed the cut in both. That's pretty unlucky. It's pretty unlucky. Okay? I think he's playing better than things indicate. I don't think he's like a world beater by any stretch, but he's also, I mean, he graduated from PGA Tour Latino America. He got through the Korn Ferry. Now he's on the PGA Tour, right? Constant improvement. Unlucky, and very, very cheap. Someone to keep an eye on just in the handful of next couple of starts. The rest of the range is pretty bad. Okay, let's run a model here. We'll find some people. So custom model, RickRunGood.com. What are we going to do? Oh boy. All right. Well, what do I want? I want, let's start with Poana. Okay, so let's do 15 on strokes gained Poana greens. Let's do, I'm only going to put a little bit on course history because it can be pretty wonky here, but let's do 10 on strokes gained Torrey Pines. Then what we will do is we'll go to driving. Yep, we got to give distance a pretty good bump here. We'll do 25 on distance. We will do 20. Let's do this. Let's do like a weighted mixed situation for approach. Let's do 10 on last 12 on approach, 15 on last 24. So this is, well, maybe not on last 24. Let's do last 50. So we're kind of giving we're giving 25 weights to strokes gained approach, but we are basically doubling up, or a little less than doubling up the count for recently, which I think is kind of interesting. We have 24 left. We could go to like strokes gained hard for hard courses. This is going to be one of the harder courses. Now you're going to get a reprieve when you go to the North course. So let's put 10 on strokes gained hard, and then, oh boy, 15 left. Implied win. Just put it on the odds. Implied winning. Let's do that. Number 1 player, Jon Rahm. Yeah, I mean, right? Like, what combination of things was I going to put together that Jon Rahm was not going to be the number 1 player? Will Zalatoris is number 2. It's a pretty big gap, though. That's 8 points from Jon Rahm, who's a 92 in value, so 92 out of 100. Will Zalatoris, who's 84. Then JT, who's 83. So that's pretty cool. So Jon Rahm, obviously number 1, no surprise there. Will Zalatoris, number 2, probably no surprise there. JT's 9,400 and number 3. I like that. Gary Woodland is 4. Gary plays hard golf courses well. He's hitting it better recently. Distance is kind of back up. That's good. Dietrich's 5. The only thing Dietrich kind of gets a knock on is like strokes gained hard. Will Gordon, Jason Day, Hideki, Charlie Hoffman. Man, if I play Charlie Hoffman, I'm in big trouble. Tony Finau is 10. Cam Davis is 11. Okay, let me save this because I might want to mess around with this later in the week. We'll call this 2023 Torrey. Maybe I weighed up on a couple of things too much, like doubling up on the approach and stuff like that. But, okay, cool. Well, We'll mess around with that. You can mess around with that. Go to RickRunGood.com, sign up. I think you'll love it. Constantly making improvements. I love it. It's strictly for golf, fantasy, and golf betting. That's all it's for. Tweet me at RickRunGood. Say hello. If I see you at Torrey, say hello. I'll be out there. It'll be great. Best of luck this week. I'll talk to you guys soon.